Dude, your hair's down.
I'm feeling particularly sexy today, man.
Know what I first thought of when I saw your hair? I
Mm.
thought of when we were all teenagers and seeing. Well, I had long hair for a little while, but that was way before. But seeing you,
You had the bangs.
yeah, well, not even the bangs, just the head banging. That's
Yeah.
what I first
Oh
thought. Like
yeah.
back in the day when everyone would do this with their. That's what I thought about when I saw your hair. You still do that, don't you?
I'll tell you what. After I had to I had to give a head shake to the our viewing audience. Um, After the couple concussions in high school with my brain,
Yeah.
honestly, I was definitely doing it. I was headbanging certainly post concussion, but at a certain point with age, it got to the point where I have head trauma and headbanging like very quickly brings that up. And I think actually, if anything, I was kind of doing it purposely to chase that because when you're headbanging, especially really hard, you get kind of a breath holding, brain jarring, euphoric action, which it basically, we're realizing as I'm saying is really just from shaking your brain around.
Dude, it makes me sick to think about that. Like to actually headbanging, like a,
Dude.
you know what I
Well,
mean?
so the funny thing for me is that, as over the years, I've either have long hair, I have really short hair, but the physics of headbanging when you have long hair and short hair is completely different. When you have long hair, you can kind of do like a little wave action. And what happens is your hair, it kind of flows with you. And so you get a little whip action, right? Like this is the hair, right? And this is the head.
Yeah.
So you're like, woo, you get a little wave action with the hair. But then when you take that hair away, all of a sudden, all you have left is this, little 8-ball dome. And so you're like, yeah. So if you're out and you're watching people headbang, it's the bald guys who are headbanging. They're the ones who are way more hardcore than the
They're the
dudes with long
gnarliest then,
hair.
huh?
Oh, dude. Well, and at least in my experience too, it's not to say that it's necessarily the bald guys, but the people that you want to be most wary of in, say, a mosh pit are the always bald.
That seems frightening to me. Like being in a mosh pit at a metal concert. That seems scary.
Oh, you don't do it unless you have a lot of adrenaline going, or a little bit of a death wish, or a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I say that jokingly because the reality is like 90% of, in my experience of mosh pits, people are actually like, yeah, there's going to be an asshole or two, but for the most part, the consensus is taking care of one another. So
I
like,
would never have guessed what
right.
you just said right now.
Totally. Well, it's an interesting thing because you have people jumping around, slamming into each other, but then people go down, and it's the same people who are slamming the hardest
Yeah.
and like the most like in it, who are the first ones to like pick you up and be like, "Hey, you
Huh.
okay?" Yeah, it's this weird camaraderie that really, I think goes hand in hand a lot of times with these kind of groups of really passionate people about whatever topic it may be.
You know what, that just reminds me how important it is to keep an open mind with a lot of things because I thought people that did that were insane. Like I
Yeah.
thought
Well,
they were
they
trying
are.
to kill like no, well, yeah, but I thought they were trying to kill each other. I didn't know there was any of that. Like so
It's kind of like, I know you grew up with sisters, but growing up with friends, same thing. It's kind of like roughhousing with the boys. It's like
oh, got it.
you're having fun, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden there's
Yeah.
a little bit of seriousness in there, and then all of a sudden like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's a thin
Yeah.
line between play and testing our boundaries, which is actually a fun way to look at fitness too, because it's we're playing, but we have boundaries.
Yeah.
You want to adhere to them.
But dude, the your hair actually looks cool when it's long. When I was in my snowboarder phase, from I guess it was mainly like seventh grade to I don't know freshman year or something, I had long hair and it looked terrible. Like
Oh, I
pe-
disagree.
people
I
would tell me,
wholeheartedly
like some of
disagree.
my friends, I remember they would say how horrendous it looked, but I didn't care. I just wanted to look like a snowboarder, and it was fun to do the headbanging every once in a while.
I can see why people would say that. I am of the opinion that when it comes to long hair, generally speaking, and generally speaking, the more jacked up it looks, the better it looks. here's the where here's
Well,
here's
that
the
depends who. With
well,
you,
yeah.
that would be true.
Well, so here's one of the things I've learned though after years of long hair. Jacked up looks fine. It's dirty. That's not cool. So your hair was jacked up in like the best way because you were like a little skater boy. It was skater boy hair is what it was.
Yeah.
It was skater boy, snowboard boy hair.
Yeah.
Jake had, for those of you watching, he had his bangs went down at an angle. I think naturally almost, right? It's not like you had him cut that way.
Oh,
but
no,
I just remember
definitely not.
I think it was, do you sleep on one side every night?
It's funny because I try to sleep on my side when I can, but I'll wake up and sometimes I have trouble sleeping like in the middle of the night, and I'll move around. I'll go to my stomach, and then that hurts my back, and then I go to my back, but I try to sleep on my side.
So I know that game. In my memory, your hair from that age looked like one of the kids who you'd go to bed and get up and just it would be like that way, but that was the style then, right? I mean, we're talking circa
that was
99, 2000. No, well, probably like 2002-ish, right? Because this was snowboarding, so
2002 I was 11 or so right around there. Yep.
Yeah. So that was the style, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, fair. That's the thing though. It's like it was the style, and I didn't care that it looked bad. I literally just wanted to look like a snowboarder. That's it.
You did.
Back when I had my snowboarding obsession. And it's funny, like really thinking about being confident like that and not even caring what people think. I'm like, man, I wish I could always feel that way now, which reminds me of a story that I wanted to tell you about Elsie. About Elsie. So some of you know my oldest daughter is autistic. She can't communicate too well. But one thing that is amazing with her, maybe this goes for a lot of little kids her age, she's almost 4, is her confidence, which is really funny. She is shameless and kind of cutthroat sometimes and confident. So Elsie, what she would used to do, Adeline and I would be eating or something, and she would come and steal our food, and we wouldn't notice. Like she would do that sometimes, like thinking everything is hers, but she'd be really sneaky. Like you wouldn't notice. You would look and be like, "What the heck? Where'd that go?" And she's very picky with what she eats, but she really likes the few things that she eats. So like for example, she really likes fruit. Like an apple is one of her things. So, she would like I would have an apple out. I'm about to eat it, and then it's gone. Elsie took it, ninja style. So one day, I don't know why this is so funny. So we were told after her class one day, her teacher said in the middle of class, she stood up there in, I think, a little group circle or whatever. She stood up, walked to the teacher's desk, grabbed her apple, went back down to the little circle, sat down, and started eating the teacher's apple. Is that the most shameless thing? Like, and I can just picture her because there's just no emotion on her face when she does that. She's just stoic. She's like, yeah, that's right. I'm confident, whatever. So I couldn't even be mad. It was too funny. Can you imagine that? A little 4-year-old doing that?
It's so funny because I feel like ultimately that's kind of, for a lot of people, that's their goal as parents, is to get their kid to the point where they can be like, and usually it's not till they're an adult where they can be like, hey, I'm going to get what I want and I'm not going to apologize for it. Right. Like we all go through this process of like, beating ourselves up, or in some way, not all of us, but a lot of us. Right. Like Elsie's like, she's good to go.
Oh,
she takes care of business.
All confidence in the world.
Oh, so sweet. That's so funny. We were talking about her yesterday a little bit. Yeah. I'm really excited to hear more about your family. I'm excited to hear about your family in general, because that was one of the pieces that over this last, 10 years, and not that we weren't talking, but we only caught up every once in a while, and it wasn't like we sat and really gotten deep. So I'm excited for already the little bit that I've learned about them, but the way that you talk about your daughters is like, I don't know, it's fun for me. I remember goofy kid Jake, and you're like, this is like grown up. You're still goofy kid Jake. Don't get me wrong.
That's still there, and it comes out when I see you and some of our old close friends. When it comes out the most. Tell me if you can relate to this. So there's a few people when I see them, all of a sudden the 12-year-old boy comes out. So it's you and some of our other close friends, and then my younger sister. The one that is Allie, if you remember. So she's just under 2 years younger. So we're closest in age out of any siblings. When I'm around her, it's like something turns on or turns off. And it's like 12-year-old boy happens again. And then when I'm
That's
around
awesome.
my youngest sister, who's in her early 20s,
Uh-huh.
it's not there as much. Like, we'll still goof around or whatever. But with the sister that I'm closest with in age, it's like I'm a
Yeah.
little kid again. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I can't help it. Like, I want to like bug her or annoy her. You know what I mean? Like the whole sibling thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
That's
like
cute.
I don't know if that's ever gonna turn off. Maybe when we're like 50. No, probably not. It'll probably be there forever.
I feel like at 31, you're probably that's you know what I mean. I feel like it might have gone. It probably would have gone before that. At this point,
Yeah.
you it's something I feel like you want to hold on to because that's really nice. That's one thing is I've got a gang of siblings, but I don't none of the well, one of them is my age. I've got one stepbrother who's a year older than me. And funnily enough, he in my life of all the people I've ever met mirrors my story the most, and so I have a real I feel a real kinship with him even outside of just being brothers, and we have a good relationship, good friendship, good brother relationship. But I don't have what you're talking about with anybody because he was my stepbrother. So when we were little, yeah, we fought and stuff and we competed, but it was a little bit different than kind of what you're explaining because my stepbrother has that relationship with his older brother who's also my
Right.
stepbrother,
Yeah.
but their blood, they have the same mom and dad, and we don't, they're so, and they grew up together, I see them when they get together, like they're two like real like professional put together dudes, and then you put them together and they're like rolling on
Dude,
the floor hitting each other, right?
that's what
Like
I'm saying. You know what I mean? But it's kind of cool though when you can be like that in front of some people because sometimes we're all just so serious. Like
Mhm.
obviously there's times for that. We want to be professional and like for us with Mission Driven Made offer a great service. But I think it's a great thing to be able to kind of pull back the layers a little bit or the curtain a little bit and just kind of let loose and be goofy and stuff. It's like it's fun to do that. I don't think
Yeah.
I ever met any of your stepbrothers. I feel like I remember you talking about the one that's a year older than you. I feel like I heard you talk about him. Did he ever live in like the South Bay? Was that him or is that someone else?
Yeah, so they both grew up in the South Bay. Yeah, you're remembering, you've got a good memory.
Yeah. Okay.
um
That's what I remember because I was born in San Jose. I don't know if you know that. So I feel like I connected it because of that and remember you saying something about them living down in that area or something.
Yeah, they both grew up in the Almaden area, and it's funny because as I got older and I've run into people and made friends with people who went to school with them who I wouldn't, so I I I have friends. So I've got no concept. I never went to school with them or anything. It wasn't part of that whole culture. But I've got friends who did go to school with them and like know of them, but don't necessarily know them because they were like sports guys. One of them, I don't want to name drop my oldest stepbrother, but um, apparently he had earned the name. I'm going to replace his name with, say, George Takei. His name is George Takei, right over. His nickname was Gorgeous George Takei. But with his actual name, right?
Yeah.
Like he was. I wish I could say it out loud. He probably wouldn't even care if I did, but like these guys apparently like had a reputation at their school, and so it was weird to like have this relationship with them, and then meet people outside. Is this really weird thing having this big extended family, which you are very aware of because you've got what, three sisters, right?
So I grew up
I
with
know the
three.
only Allie.
So Allie, that's the one that's closest to me. It's a little younger. I have an older sister that's a couple years older than me. And us three all have the same mom and dad. My
Mhm.
youngest sister, the one that's like
Oh, right.
9 years or so younger than me, we have the same mom,
Mhm.
different dads. And then
Right.
technically, so I don't normally tell people this part because it's just a mouthful to explain all this all the time. I
Mhm.
have another half sister and another half brother that are way older than me that I've only met a handful of times in my life.
Mm.
And they had the same biological dad as I did and a different mom. So
Okay.
kind of all over the place. But what I tell most people, because it's easier, is I have three sisters. But technically, I didn't even think about that tonight. I have more half siblings than I do full siblings or whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah. It's an odd thing. Honestly, one of the things I've personally learned and that I've been really grateful for. over the years is the fact that, we think about family when, especially when we're young, is one thing, and that may be, usually that's like some kind of blood, relationship and familial bond. And then as we get older, it's like we kind of realize is, yeah, family is wonderful and really important, but really family is not necessarily about the blood you share. It's about, the
Yeah.
people that you're around and the people who are there for you. Or even in this case, like we're talking about, it's like, I know my relationship with my, especially when the stepbrother I'm talking about when I was little was contentious. You know what I mean? But like, it's so funny because, and this is kind of what we were talking about the other day with your kids, as as we have grown, though we were, I think I know I had some scars for years. You know what I mean? Like we fought when we were
Yeah.
kids, but as adults, like we're close. I mean, it's not like we talk every day, but like he's a really important person in my life, um, and I don't know that we would have the relationship that we do today had we not fought when we were little kids.
Oh yeah, for sure. But
You
like
know?
what you said too about when you're an adult, all of a sudden your relationship, like you're more bonded and you're closer with each other. But that's how it was with Allie, the one that's right below me.
Mm.
Growing up, we fought all the time. She was a little monster. Allie, I love you, but you know it's true. She was a little monster. No, she was. And then when she got into high school, so we were all in high school. That's when let me see. I believe I was a senior or junior when she got there. Anyways, though, when that happened, literally overnight, we just became like she was like my best friend after that. It was so weird. Like
Nice.
literally overnight. Now, I mean, I talk to her just about every day. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but we did all that too. When we were growing up, we fought all the time, and especially being the only boy, it's like you had all this, aggression and energy and all this stuff too. And so I didn't have a brother to do that with, but I made do with my with my
Mm.
sister. So
I never knew her like on a personal level, but like it was more like, I was like, oh hey, you know what I mean? When I was either with you or Andrew, more like, when we're both with Andrew type thing. But she always struck me as somebody who was pretty like on her toes, like ready to go, kind of like not, like some people are like, oh, she always struck me as somebody who would like get you back. Is that
yeah,
accurate?
yeah, I would say so. Yeah, no, definitely.
Get you back. I don't know about general people, but your guys'
Oh
relationship
yeah. I
certainly.
mean, but I would say though, I do mess with her more.
Do you?
Yeah, I would say that. But we do get competitive with each other. Like when one of the last times I was there visiting her and her husband and my niece, they have this little game in their backyard. What the heck is it called? So I'm gonna try to describe this. And I'm probably gonna butcher it again. So if you can picture a long string or chain, and it's hooked up to something above you. On the end of the chain or string, there's a little ring. Okay,
Okay.
so you take the ring and you lift it up like this. You drop it and it swings, and you try to get the ring to
Oh
land on
yeah.
a hook. You know what I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about? I
Yeah,
don't even know what
yeah.
it's called. So like I remember
Yeah.
we played that, and within 30 seconds, I'm like talking crap to her. Like we're all competitive. I'm telling her I'm gonna destroy her at whatever this game is called. So she, I'm worse, but I mean she'll give it back to me for
Yeah,
sure. But I'm definitely more of the instigator with that.
that's funny. Yeah, I always enjoyed. I always enjoyed hearing you talk about her because you've always loved her a lot, and I don't know. It's one of those things. Somebody enjoys something particularly, so you enjoy hearing
Oh,
about it. You know what I
for
mean?
sure.
And I always just felt that way, like about you. I felt like you were always close with her, and always made me kind of like, yeah, that's
Do,
awesome. I
yeah,
could do
dude. When
that.
when people when people love something to where they geek out on whatever that is, I love that. Even if it's not something I'm interested in. For
Hmm.
example, so the metaverse. I'm trying to still understand what that even is. The whole thing Facebook's
Hmm.
creating the whole virtual world.
Mm.
It's funny seeing people geek out and stuff like that, even though I know nothing about it. But are you familiar with this whole metaverse thing that they're creating right now and all about it?
Are you talking about the specific virtual reality landscape they're creating, or are you talking about the broader metaverse, and as in like the metaverse, like the internet and stuff?
The first one, the whatever
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Facebook is creating, where
Gotcha.
like I think you legitimately wear those like goggle
Yeah.
things. And do you know anything about that? Is everyone going to be doing that in the next couple of years?
I don't think so. So here's what's happening right now, and as far as and let me preface this by saying I'm not super familiar with this tech whatsoever. The only thing I've seen about it is like I saw Zuckerberg on, it was like I don't know. I want to say it was like Gail King or somebody, but he was with some, he was being interviewed, and they were doing, they were having an interview with with the things on, and here's the thing: tech helps and is an advantage to us when it helps us connect. It becomes a hindrance as soon as it diverts into disconnection in one shape or form. So do I think that is genius that that they're creating a space online where we can all spend time together and, live our lives virtually? Yes. Is that the future? Yes. Is it through Facebook's, I guess you're saying it's called metaverse, which I didn't realize. I don't know.
I
I don't
think
think so.
so. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's what they're doing, like some big project or whatever.
So generally speaking, when the way I'm familiar with people referring to the metaverse is more the metaverse at large, meaning the space in the digital space in which we all spend our time, and the broad umbrella kind of catch all for that. So, as far as the metaverse at large goes, yeah, I mean, honestly, I until there's some kind of blowback technologically, I think it's just going to keep on progressing this way, where we're living online more and more. And again, there's a Murphy's law. Something's going to happen, and it's going to,
Yeah.
But that said, the reality is that the internet and the digital trend that our global culture is going in is not some abstract idea that just came about. Carl Jung, one of the foremost psychologists, he was one of the students of Freud and one of his dissenters as well. He talked about the collective unconscious, and we've collective subconscious. No, I think it's collective unconscious. And basically what that is the idea that we have, and I'm going to probably butcher this, to be fair, let me throw that in there too. But the idea is basically that human beings and all living things, depending on how you see it, have basically a cloud of knowledge that we all kind of share. And I'm not talking about the digital cloud. I'm talking about, like, some people will call it psychic, some people will call it intuition, whatever it is. Sometimes we walk into a room and we have a feeling that something's going on, right? And it might be instincts, it might be cues, but whatever it is, it's subconscious, it's unconscious processes, right? So the idea of the collective unconscious, I think, or subconscious, whatever it was, sorry, the collective, we're going to call it unconscious until I double check online, is that we have access to varying degrees to this information as human beings. Basically, the internet and the metaverse is a almost tangible manifestation of that collective unconscious, meaning that this theory that Jung talked about in the early 1900s, I think, has basically manifested itself in such a real way that to call the internet almost its own thing, it almost ignores the fact that it's simply an extension of our own knowledge and expression as human beings. So that said, as long as it's there, and as long as we have this huge space to create and exist, that will continue to happen, in my opinion.
I just it makes me worried, the thought of people never interacting with each other,
Right.
Like in person, and just spending their entire life like that. It's like, can we go too far with technology? I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, I I just picture some teenage boys, laying on the ground drooling, having those goggles on, never having a actual human interaction. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's the only thing. It's like fascinating to think about, and it makes me curious, but that's kind of at the point I'm like, is this too far? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Well, so here's a really interesting way to think about that. You and I, especially, I'll say not you and I, because while I have come to adopt technology. I'm doing the Twitch thing. We're doing the Twitch thing now too, because hi Twitch audience, hello.
What's up, Twitch?
um, so in a lot of ways, we've already accepted and are
Yeah,
kind of utilizing the technology, right?
that's very true.
That said, we didn't adopt this technology because it was sounded fun to us. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, ultimately, actually, it is fun, and now it does sound fun because of what we're sharing. But
Yeah.
it's a tool and a means to an end, as far as sharing, and a necessary means to an end at this point in our culture of sharing whoever you are and whatever you're doing with others.
Yeah.
The reality is, especially post COVID, is that we have to, if we're going to continue to interface with people, find new and creative ways to do it, because we just can't in the way that we could before. Even if anyway, it's just not possible in the same way.
Yeah. No, I totally see what you're saying, and I just don't know if that threshold for when it's too much. I don't know if we'll ever be able to even see that, because say when we were kids looking to right now where technology is, I would have thought that was crazy, like an
Right.
iPhone and all this stuff would have been insane to me. But now it's like kind of normal. So I don't know if it's just going to be normal and the threshold is really just some, ambiguous thing. And I don't know where that actually is, but it does get you to think a little bit.
Yeah, well, and it opens up a more nuanced question that we often get started talking about here, about individuals and how we all individually might interact with these systems, because the answer is that it's not one or the other at any given time. It's always both.
Yeah.
Right. So there's the
Yeah.
right now, as we're talking about, the technology is doing its good thing and its bad thing. For example, right now there's some dark web stuff where people are being victimized right now
Oh
as we're
my
talking.
gosh.
Absolutely. I know, I'm
Oh,
sorry
I
to
didn't know we
get
were going there. I didn't mean to
No, yeah.
laugh. I thought you were going to say dark web followed
Yeah,
by some
right.
weird gaming thing where
Right. I
people are
said
like,
people being victimized.
and then you said victimized, and I started laughing. I was like, oh shoot, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant.
Object. This is not the appropriate reaction.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
but to give it the contrast, right there,
Right.
right now as we're talking, there's absolutely horrendous stuff being happening online right now as we're talking. At the same time, there's somebody who is interacting, like Twitch, for example. There's somebody on Twitch right now who is making income, who is socializing around and doing something they're passionate about, whether it's games or art or something else, from their room where they are bound to because of some health condition. Right. So there's always a balance. There's a balance. There's a counterbalance, right? Like to say it's gone too far or it's not gone far enough.
Right.
Really, there's another deeper question of what are the extremes of behavior that are on this in this platform and on this, whereas we're going back to the phrase the metaverse, and how do we rationalize that and proceed, right? Because as individuals, we have the choice to either engage with technology or disengage, and you and I apparently are choosing the engaging.
I know. And it's speaking of technology, have you seen those solar cars?
Solar cars? No.
Solar cars. Like there's a
Oh.
solar panel that runs on the top of the car and it's completely powered by solar. I
Is
saw
this
an
Tesla?
article. It was from no, I didn't see one from Tesla. I don't know if they're doing it. It's from a company. One of the companies is in San Diego. I think it's called starts with an A. I'll remember it. They're building one. There was some article from 2021. I don't think people can buy them yet. But isn't that crazy though? Thinking about people driving around solar cars, and one of them said it was starting at like $20-something thousand, so not some $150,000 car. Yeah, and then there's some companies in Europe, I believe, that are doing it too. But can you imagine people just driving around solar cars? It's a very interesting idea, though.
Honestly, man, I'm at the point now where I just expect to have my mind blown. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just the other day, I was in Best Buy and I was looking at some speakers, some audio solutions, and I came by the headphones and there were some Bose sunglasses. Like, why are these why are these in the audio section?
Huh.
Turns out,
Interesting.
yeah, they're turns out. So what these are, they're Bose Ray-Bans that have little thick boys, little side thick guys here on the what are the arms of the glasses, and in the arms are little speakers that go right into your
No
ears.
way.
But here's the crazy part: they use bone conduction, induction, conduction. I think whatever it is, they put vibrations through your cheeks, through your cheekbones, and so you feel not only feel the music, but
What?
you hear it in a different way. You know, like when you go to a concert and you can feel the music in like your bones and your face. That's basically
Yeah.
what it's simulating. It's creating that on your face.
Dude,
Yeah,
that's
so
so
it's
crazy.
crazy. And there's some other products too. I've seen another product that actually I wouldn't represent. I almost bought, and then I did some more research, and people were like, "This is not an audiophile product," but like there's like a little thing that's like a little hockey puck that you strap to yourself, and you plug it into your music, and it goes
Right on your chest?
yeah, or like you put it wherever you can put it on your hip,
Oh,
but
gotcha. Yeah.
it recreates the vibrations. You know, a bunch of the reviews that I read were like, this is basically, it might as well be a buzzing phone. It's not that great. So the technology is not there yet, but
Yeah.
that's the direction we're going, right? Where
Yeah.
our our very perception of what is possible and how we're going to experience things is changing rapidly, to the point where I'm personally like, oh yeah, you know, is that a microwave that makes food in it? Yeah, I don't know. That's the dumb thing, because all microwaves kind of make food in them.
No, I
But
know
what
what
I
you mean.
mean is, right, it's like, oh, here's a chocolate shake that I just typed into my microwave.
Whenever I think of crazy stuff like that, I think of Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that him and his team come up with,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely insane. And something about them sending more people to the moon in the next couple years. Like when I think of like pushing the limits with tech, I think of Tesla
Yep.
and all the crazy stuff they're doing. And not to mention, it is highly entertaining listening to him and politicians argue with each other. It is really.
Yeah.
Have you seen that at all? Oh my
No.
gosh! Because everyone hates him because he makes a lot of money, and
Yeah.
you know he's just that triggers people that he makes a lot of money,
Mm.
and people are saying it's not fair. He doesn't pay tax, and then
Right.
dude, he just gives it right back to the politicians, and
Right.
he like showed how much he's going to pay in taxes this year, and it was
Oh,
some record number. I don't know, like 12 billion or something like that. And
yeah.
then he said to whatever politician it was, use it wisely, and
No.
just like, dude, they're going back and forth. I was cracking up. It's really funny to watch or to listen to that, because normally, you know, people are a little bit more sneaky about it, but I just watching them go back and forth was quite entertaining. I don't know if you saw any of that, but
I haven't, but I've been really I enjoy Elon Musk. I think he's refreshing in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't, there's a lot to him, right? But, you know, for example, one of the things that made me really like him is when he hosted Saturday Night Live.
oh, yep,
You saw, so, and
yep,
he was
he's
like,
on the
I'm the,
spectrum.
yeah, right.
Yep, I didn't know
And
that.
yeah, me neither, which makes a lot of sense, first of all, just because he's
Yep,
kind of off, right? Not off, but off from what we
yeah,
can perceive as normal, right?
right,
And which, you know, ironically is super normal, but that's a whole other can to crack open.
yeah, yeah,
But so that was really cool to see that he was on the spectrum, and that he was like, for me, the key being that he was open about it and that he shared it on such a large scale, whether people knew or not. Now people are going to know, because that's the biggest
yeah,
stage you've ever stood on. You know what I mean? That's
yeah,
the biggest stage most people ever stand on. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah,
So, you know, and that's, we'll get into more of this as we go along with our listeners, but that's something that's really near and dear to my heart, because I've got my own mental health conditions, which I've shared a little bit, but we'll have whole
yeah,
conversations about at some point.
yeah.
So,
No, I thought it was awesome he shared that. Obviously, I'm a little biased since my daughter has autism,
mhm.
and the spectrum is very wide, because a lot of people will look at him and just think everyone that has autism, you know, is
Right,
capable in the exact way he is. But
right.
there's such a huge spectrum. But regardless, though, when I heard him say that, it made me like really happy and really cool to see. Like he's like leading the way in what he does, you know what I mean? And he is on the spectrum. I just thought it was really cool to hear. And it's funny because looking back, seeing interviews of him or just him talking, some of his mannerisms, when you look back, I'm like, okay, I can see that now. You know what I mean? Like
Interesting.
it totally makes sense. I always thought it was just completely, he was so smart that his propellers were revving so fast that, he couldn't articulate his thoughts fast enough. That's what I
Right.
always thought. So maybe it actually is a combination of that too.
Yeah.
But it does, make sense looking back at old interviews of him and stuff. And also
Tracks.
he said one of the coolest quotes that I've ever heard. I don't know if he was the originator of this or if he just said it too, but when talking about entrepreneurship, he said entrepreneurship is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. And and before like I started all this, it maybe didn't make perfect sense. And then
Yeah.
starting this, I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
And just saying, basically, especially when you're starting out, it's like you have no idea what you're doing. You don't have an instruction manual. You make tons of mistakes, and it's just like, what is going on? So I just thought that was really funny. I heard him say
Yeah.
that. I think that was like a year ago or so.
It's always so heartening to hear somebody with that kind of success talk about being exactly where we either are or may have been at a certain point, or for some of us are working towards, right? Like, because this is for both of us, this is not our first time staring into the abyss. I know both of us,
That's
right?
happened a lot.
Right. Like both of us have found each other at this point in our careers after many years. I mean, we're both in our early 30s, so what, 10 years probably of both of like really trying to like build careers in similar and or other fields, or similar and or completely different fields, right? And what you're seeing here, whether it looks like it or not, guys, is the benefit of the abyss, right? Well, is the benefit of lots of years of us doing that individually and now together, because the reality is we're not making money from this yet, and we're gonna find a lot of success before we make any money doing it.
Yeah, I think that's in this scenario. I think that's the correct way.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to act
Agreed.
like if someone makes money,
It's the most
day one,
reasonable way.
most reasonable. Yeah, that makes sense. And I did notice too. It's like if you start trying to focus on monetizing to the fact where that is your first step before thinking about value for people,
Yeah.
then there can be an issue. But a project like this, it's really big to take on and does take a long time. I mean, you already know that. We've talked about that offline before.
Oh yeah. Well, and I, perfect example is I felt the effects of that on this last podcast, because I mean, for those of you who listened or will go on to listen, I mean, I had pretty much a breakdown in yesterday's podcast, and my instinct was to quietly go about it and just move through it. And I realized that this is the setting really to talk about it, and I'm really glad I did, because it gave me an opportunity to get my feelings off my chest, and it gave Jake an opportunity to like kind of give me a hand, gave me a helping hand and also a little pat on the back, and we got through it. But the reality is that it's not going to be perfect. It's not, you know what I mean? Like these bumps, like as much as that hurt yesterday and as much as I went to bed like, oh, like almost sick to my stomach. But the reality is when you're starting something new, it's going to happen. And the benefit of that happening is that a couple of things. One, I learned from it, and I'm not going to go into what I learned. That's for me, to talk about maybe privately with Jake offline when we leave you guys. And two, it gives us the opportunity to I mean, let's forget about it too. It gives us the opportunity to improve. And ultimately my goal and our goal is to learn how to extend the most value from our experience and our knowledge to you, the listener, in a real practical, functional way, that it helps to tumble a few times to figure out how to do that. And so hey, I took it. Here I am.
And something that really set me off back in the day. So and this is common in this world, but say there was a brand new EMT on the ambulance or a brand new firefighter, whatever it is. So it's say their first day, have no idea what they're doing yet, never been on a 911 call before. And sometimes you see, it's not always the older people, it's some people that have been doing it for like a couple years, kind of have this entitlement thing like, oh, I'm all experienced, and will get mad, like really mad at these new people for not knowing how to do that yet, when it's like they've literally never done that. So I always thought that was funny. Like sometimes people would make comments to me after calls in a good way and say, "Oh wow, you really like tried to teach that person on the or talk to them or coach them a little bit." And it's just funny that anyone had to say that to me ever. To me, that should be commonplace. Like
Right.
someone is newer than you at something, then I feel like it's the more senior person's responsibility to teach what you've been taught. It's to me that's like a very simple thing. I remember that would really upset me. You just see people getting so mad. I'm like, dude, relax. Like, come
Yeah.
on now. Like
Yeah.
everyone's learning. You were there once. Like, let's not forget that. I'm not a huge fan of that. And I'm not talking about like someone being hard on someone. There's a place for that, but it's like, dude, it's their first day. Like, come
Yeah.
on. Like, relax. You know?
Well, and the problem comes to the same thing that, we talk about as trainers a lot is at what point do we get in the way of progress and the job getting done? Because if we're beating up the people who are learning and discouraging folks from learning how to do it better, where are we going to get the relief when we need somebody to come in and
Yep.
pick up our, take
Yep.
up our shift or whatever, right?
Yep. 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 And
So,
so someone that was actually supposed to be on the show, he's gonna have to reschedule. Do you remember when I was telling you how the muscle doc was gonna be on our show? It was right before you started. His name's Dr. Jordan Shallow. I don't know if you
mhm.
remember. So he was supposed to be on. He had to reschedule. But anyways, he said something that was fantastic, and I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with this. So I heard him say this. It must have been a couple weeks ago. As a trainer or whatever you do, you have to meet people where they are. There's
Yep.
no other choice. Like,
Yep.
if you don't do that, what is going to happen? They are not going to continue with you. If you say if
Period.
you're a personal trainer or whatever it is, you have to meet people there. I think
Yep.
that was a mistake I made as a new trainer. We talked about a little bit. I expected everyone's mind to work the same as my mind, and fitness
Right.
was always my favorite thing. But it might not be this person's favorite thing. It might be hard for them to even make it in the gym. So remember, that was a little mistake that I made, but what great advice. And Dr. Shallow, we cannot wait to have you on the show, by the way. But
Oh, I'm
meeting
so excited.
people where they are. And you could see that parallel. I mean, that's not just fitness. That can be really anything. And that, I mean, it just makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It's a very natural thing to as a trainer, because that's the thing that we tend to forget probably more than anybody as trainers, is that like we're human and that we are gonna not always be at our best. But what happens with that can be that we um, whether we're aware of it or not, we can be more invested in our idea of what is successful as opposed to what is true success.
Yep.
Specifically, what I mean is a lot of trainers fall into the trap of, oh, I need to get this person a really great workout today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you can get someone
Yeah.
a great workout, that's always the end goal if possible. But the reality is that just like us, as people who train ourselves, we know we wake up and some days we're just not in it. Some days we're just like, I
Dude,
don't feel like whatever.
like today,
Mhm.
like
Oh
I told you
yeah.
it's my deload week,
Uh-huh.
and so it came at perfect time because I like no energy today, which is perfect because deload I like drop the weight to probably 50%. I go pretty light on deloads,
Love
and
it.
I was like, man, that's how I feel. How you're just describing, I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel so weak and wimpy right now. But of course, I still felt better after I went.
Totally.
So yeah, but dude, but speaking of good people, like we were just talking about, did you see what happened with John Madden? You see that he passed away
Yeah, but this was like a few
a
months
couple
ago,
weeks
wasn't
ago?
it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a couple weeks ago. I thought it was a few months ago.
No,
Shit. It's
it
just
was
been the last couple
the
weeks.
end of December, I think it was. Yeah, I
Oh,
remember it was right around. Dude, I was
I
so
must have
bummed.
thought he died before he died.
Yeah, I mean he
I
was
thought he died like a couple months ago or something.
he was definitely older, but man, the for those of you that don't know, John Madden is the most famous football announcer of all time. There was the Madden video game, and before that, he spent 10 years as the Raiders head coach. And if I'm not mistaken, has the highest winning percentage of any coach in history that has coached for 10 years or more. So man,
Cool.
it was crazy when he passed away. It's one of those things like that affected me a little bit, when there's those certain people that you've kind of looked up to growing up or or whatever, like when Kobe died, like we talked about the other day, that one hit home a little bit. But there's a great documentary out on John Madden though.
Where's it?
That was on, I think it was HBO Max, possibly.
Okay, I'm gonna check
Yeah.
it out.
Oh, it's so good. And Lean found it and wanted to watch it. I was like, oh my gosh, my wife's turning into a football fan. This is amazing. So that was awesome. Dude, have you read the 4 Hour Work Week book?
No, but I've heard good things about it,
Okay.
and I'm from what I've heard, I'm stoked on it. But I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Okay, so I figured you at least heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
So the 4 Hour Work Week. So Tim Ferriss, I think, is an absolute genius. Let me just make
Mm-hmm.
that be known before I talk about it. So the book, it was so, I don't want to say bad. That's not the right word. It was so much. I had to stop reading it after, like, I don't know, 2 chapters or something. I was like, I can't do this. And I was like, is this just me? Like, it was so all over the place.
Mm.
And like nothing really made sense. And then I looked to read other reviews to see, because this is like a best-selling book. And one of the reviews I saw, it said, it seems like Tim Ferriss snorted a bunch of cocaine and then snorted more cocaine and then just kept writing more of the book. I was like, okay, it's not just me. Like, I couldn't keep up. Like, you could tell how smart he is, but it goes all over the place. It's like
Yeah.
that. There's never a clear point that's made, and each page there's like different sections to it. It's so weird. You should check it out. That'd be to see if you like it, of course. But I had to stop reading it, and I wanted to finish it just to finish it, and then Adeline was like, "Why? If you don't like it, like why
Yeah.
would you finish?" So yeah, I stopped after. It must have been just a couple chapters or so.
So I may have actually been mixing it up with something else, because when you're talking about 4 Hour Work Week, I thought you were talking about what I guess is really studies that are talking about, and there are people who are representing this who are talking about how basically we have about 2 or 3 hours. I forget the exact numbers, but 3 or 4 hours worth of actual production time,
Yep.
productive time. This is the same person, same guy.
So I don't know if what you're talking about is the exact thing that
Mm-hmm.
he said, but he has said similar things, and I've also
Mm-hmm.
seen multiple studies on exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So because that's what when you brought that up and when I read that, that's what I thought that we were talking about. Because I will say, while I don't have any knowledge, I haven't really done any, meaningful reading about this. Anecdotally, my experience is very much in line with that. It took me a long time to figure out that I got to get up and I got to do my work first thing in the morning, get work done. Not to say like I can do personal training in the evening, because it's different kind of work that really, like we talk about, just requires you to kind of meet your person where they're at. So it's a different type of work. But like when I'm talking about podcast work, when I'm talking
Yeah.
about Twitch work, when I'm talking about any kind of thing where I've got to be really kind of articulate and on it and on point, I got to do it in the morning, and I only have max 3-4 hours before I start to have the decline. And even then, that's on a good day, right? Some days you wake up and you're just like, you're not going to have half hour of good time. So
One thing I did like that he was talking about in the book is how, just like you were saying about our capacity to actually focus and work. And he brings up in the book about, this 8-hour workday, every day, that it's kind of comical, like why it has to be 8 hours versus get your work done. So
Right.
whether that is
yeah
1 hour a day, 30
Right.
minutes, whether that's 4 hours, whatever number
whatever
that
it
is,
is.
and how the 8, and I was like, that is kind of funny. And then a study that I did see was most people that have, an 8-hour workday, they only actually work for 2 to 3 hours of that
Right.
day. The rest is spent fidgeting around or talking to coworkers or whatever it is. So I was like, that is interesting, because up until a year or two ago, I was always about just, work your butt off, the entire time, instead of like the mindset of what makes you produce, what allows you to produce the most, versus like, I'm just going to work the hardest and for the longest, just to be prideful in that, which is, I started to learn that's not really the right idea. Like just working to work and that's it, instead of working like, okay, how can I produce the most, in this amount of time? So he did bring up a great point about that the 8-hour a day workday, that doesn't necessarily like why instead of just getting your work done. Then I've seen other studies, saying after 90 minutes, people can't focus anymore, on average.
That makes a lot of sense, and it also speaks to our tendency to accept waste culturally. We don't we have a idea that working is going to meet our goals, but that's not necessarily the case. I like to think about when I was pursuing music. I mean, I'm still pursuing music professionally, but it's a little bit different. I'm doing a bunch of other things. But when I was doing music exclusively, one of the things that is an easy trap to fall into, and this is not just music, is being so devoted to something that that's all you do. And what happens is you end up with a poorer product because you're not out experiencing other things and experiencing life, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I know it may seem like a little bit of a tangent, or but there's no easy answers. There is trying different things, finding out what works for us, and hopefully finding something we like. But as long as we're willing to continue exploring, we'll get there. So
it's funny you say that, because my mind for so long was, no, just devote to one thing, just obsess over it. So for me, I'm trying to now find the value in other things too. I'm trying to do that. I feel like that takes more work for me. Just the whole balance thing. I feel like I kind of have a different view with, even what that means anyway. And I don't need perfect balance in everything in my life, but I am learning to remember, it's good to spend time with the family, take care of your wife and your kids or significant other, or whatever it is. So I have to remember I can get so focused on what it is I'm doing and trying to make and produce that, it's very easy to overlook the other things. So what you're saying makes perfect sense.
I think that's something that a lot of really driven folks share. So if you found yourself, listening because you share that sentiment of the mission-driven culture that we talk about, and and that's more complex than but if you share the drive that we do, in terms of finding your happiest, healthiest, strongest, whatever may be self, it really can't be hit home hard enough that being willing to question your accepted way of thinking or your accepted guidelines comes into play time and time and time again. Because when we're willing to take a step back and really question whether what we're doing is working for us, there's nothing to fear anymore. Because if the answer is yes, then good, you figured it out, stick with it. And if the answer is no, well, you get to keep playing. That's fun. You know what I mean? And the reality is, even for those of us who find what works for us, our brains and our bodies get so accustomed so quickly that you have to find new stuff, because otherwise you're going to get bored, and your brain and your body is going to get really good at doing those movements that you do. And it's not going to know how to do other novel things. So, we're kind of dealing with a moving target by default.
Oh, moving target. I love that. Absolutely. You're getting me excited. You ready to, you want to talk some fitness?
Yeah.
You ready? You want to do it? Do you want to hear something crazy?
Ready, bro.
You want to hear something crazy that I've seen at my new gym probably about 10 times now. What I've witnessed this guy doing. Okay. So normally I'll admit, if I saw something like this, I would drive, on the way home, I'd talk to my wife and maybe poke a little fun at what this person's doing. But it was so cool every time. I had to kind of stand and just watch. So I've seen this guy do this probably 10 different times. So he was standing on a Bose ball on the flat part, okay? So like the plastic part, the little balance thing that people use. And
I don't like it.
Yeah, I know. So I think those things are pretty silly for most people.
Yeah, exactly. For most people.
I saw this with my own eyes, clean and jerked with a barbell, 170 pounds, while balancing on a Bose ball.
What a badass.
dude.
Let me be clear. I'm not suggesting anybody
Oh
out there go out
no,
and do that.
that is a
But
horrendous idea.
yeah, but at the same time, if did it look good? Did he have good form and everything?
So I've seen him do it multiple times. A few times he bailed and kind of fell back. He didn't
Well,
he didn't
that's
get hurt.
good.
He fell back
Yeah.
and threw the weight and it crashed into the rig in front of him. But I also saw
He
him
threw
actually
the
do it.
weights.
But he actually did it. Saw him
Okay.
do it multiple times. Same guy. So another thing that he does, he must be a gymnast or I don't know or something.
Okay,
But
yeah.
he
That
has
makes
he
sense.
sets up a plyo box behind him, one of the cushiony ones, and he does a backflip up onto the plyo box. I've seen him do that a bunch.
What? Okay, he's yeah.
Yep.
Bose ball isn't shiz for this guy. He just did backflip onto a platform. Yeah,
Yep.
right. Okay.
Saw him do that a bunch of times. And the last thing I've seen him do, these are the only 3 things I've ever seen him do. He does handstand walks across part of the gym floor, but he does it while having a medicine ball in between his feet.
What a savage.
I know. I was like, so
That's
this
cool.
guy, it's like I couldn't figure it out. It's like he's doing this for a specific reason
Yeah.
because he
Sounds
did
like
it so many times. He wasn't just trying to show off once. So I'm like, I don't know if he's a stunt person or if he's a
Right.
gymnast. Well, then again, even some of those would be interesting for a gymnast to do. But yeah, I was like, this is insane. I almost wanted to ask if I could film him, but I didn't want him to think I was some weirdo.
Okay, wait, I'm so sorry. Can we take a pause there? Because if you just started noting, I started running around my chair. It's because I realized I've got to go to the restroom so bad.
Yeah.
So apologies, because we're going to have to throw a little edit in on the actual podcast, and I'm going to have to put up the BRB, but otherwise this podcast is going to end a whole different way.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to put up the MDM start sign again real quick, and we'll be right back in a few minutes.
Cool.
Woo! All right. Well, thank you, sir, for that. I needed that very, very badly. You
We're
ever
good.
need to go so bad that you're afraid it's going to start coming out of your face?
Oh, dude. I was just yesterday. I was telling a story about the worst I ever had to pee, and it was on the 17 going to Santa Cruz,
Oh no!
bumper to bumper traffic, and I was playing some game with
No.
someone who can chug the most water, and
Uh-huh.
we had a gallon thing, and I can't remember how much I drank, but I drank it all like really quick, and so I've never had to pee that bad in my life.
But I mean, like, what did you do? Did you just have to wait till you got where you went, or did you do the side of the road on the 17?
So-
Which, by the way, is a little context, folks. If you're not familiar with the 17 in California, it's the road that most people take when they're a lot of people from the northern area take when they're trying to get down to San Diego. I talk good to Santa Cruz, and it's like super, super, super windy, and it's usually super busy and
sketch.
It's super sketch because the thing is, it's also where the commuters is the one road for the commuters. So people who drive it every day are driving it with people who are going to like the beach on Sunday.
Yep.
It's disaster. So this is where Jake is stuck bumper to bumper. And I would assume, like, for me, in my mind, I'm like, I'm getting out. I'm on the side of the road at that point if it's bumper to bumper.
Oh, dude, yeah. So I wasn't driving. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I think we were pretty young because I think a friend's parent was driving.
Oh,
and
okay.
we had to pull over, like, because I had to go so bad. I don't remember where I went. It was probably in the middle of the forest somewhere, but we had to pull over somewhere. It was that bad.
Somebody's parent is like, I'm not having this
Yeah.
kid's pee in my back seat.
Yeah. But I won the water chugging game, so that's all I cared about at the time.
Did you win? I don't. I feel like the real you.
Did I win? I guess I didn't really win. I was excited for about 30 seconds that I won in the competition, but then I'm like, oh crap.
Oh my god! Have you heard the story? And I'll let Andrews tell us. Oh, when hopefully we get him on in whatever capacity. But you've heard the story of how Andrew almost got me to drink his pee pee, right?
On purpose?
On purpose. Yeah, this was
Oh, what a G.
granted. This is in the drinking days, right? So, but I'm gonna leave the long story for Andrew. But the long story short is that um, he had drank his beer and he drank so fast it went right out of him, right? And then he refilled this 40 of Budweiser or whatever it was, and it was my turn, and I thought it was a fresh Budweiser, but because it was, and I even brought it up to my lips, and because it was fresh like beer pee,
Oh my
it smelled like beer.
God.
Like it did not smell like pee. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
I
my
like,
God.
because I'm pretty neurotic. I smell things before I drink them anyway, just because of what it was spoiled, right? Or like it's bitter or whatever. I just want to be prepared. Luckily that I still to this day owe Matt for that, because Matt was like Brian, Andrew, there might have even been somebody else there. I think about, I remember them too. They're like, not saying anything. I'm like, what? And Matt was like, bro,
He saved you, dude.
yeah. So
He saved you.
Matt, if you're out there somewhere, I still owe you for that, my friend. I don't know, it's not like we hang out, but it's I still
saved you.
I owe you. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He definitely saved you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so we were just making fun of the Bosu ball a little bit. Now I'm not really into gimmicky stuff with fitness. Like, you could argue some of the gimmicky things have their place, but there is one that I love, and it's a little gimmicky. Have you heard of crossover symmetry?
Crossover symmetry, yeah, but honestly, I think I read it in your notes, and I'm like, yeah, I know of crossover symmetry, or what do you say?
Crossover symmetry.
Crossover symmetry, maybe.
Yeah.
Now as you're saying it, maybe I do. A lot of times you say something, I'm like, no, I don't know, and then you start
Yep.
describing, I'm like, oh, you mean that? Duh. I'm not great with names sometimes, but after you, apologies.
But crossover symmetry isn't in like most gyms. It's not like not everyone has them, but essentially, yeah, exactly. They're bands, and they're supposed to
I know what you're
help
talking about.
getting your shoulders and your rotator cuff
Yeah.
warmed up. And how they market it is, if you're in shoulder pain, use this to help decrease that and improve your performance and all these other things. So very, I guess, general, almost blanket statements. But oh yeah, and just a review, for what the rotator cuff is. So it's comprised of 4 muscles and tendons, and it sits right on your scapula. And it's 4 muscles: the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus, the teres minor, and the subscapularis. So those are 4 muscles, and it helps a couple things. So at the top of your arm, there's that top of the bone, your humerus, there's a ball-looking thing, and that sits in your shoulder joint. So the rotator cuff helps keep those 2 things together, and also helps rotate your arm internally and externally. But also, a lot of people do tend to get pain there, and I was one of them. So this device, the crossover symmetry device, I actually love. So I would get to the gym extra early before I'd start training, and I would go through the little warm-up they had, and it would take about 5 or 6 minutes. And so the problem is, people act like you can isolate your rotator cuffs and that other shoulder movements don't do that, which is not true at all. But I will tell you that little device was amazing. It made my shoulders feel great. I had shoulder issues for so long. When I did that, I was able to lift more, and more importantly, I wasn't in as much pain after. So that was more important to me. But you've never used one of those before?
So I have, I used it. I've never really trained with it, is probably the best answer. I used it earlier on. Honestly, so I haven't been in a proper like gym in years, because if I need to go to a gym, I go to the studio that I work at, which is more of a boutique thing anyway. So we don't have that there. And I work out at home anyway. So the last time I used it was prior to me even training in any kind of really productive way. For a lot of years, I really trained just for the sake of feeling good and trying to, be healthy, and not, it wasn't really this level of like, oh, I'm applying these techniques and stuff. So I have not, though I do have an opinion on that category of equipment and exercise. And, you know, like everything else, it's got its really important place, especially when you start talking about a client who is coming off of being in working with a physical therapist. You know, if you're working with somebody who has, you know, existing rotator cuff injury and they already have talked to a physical therapist and they've
Yeah.
been cleared to come work with you, you have the option as a personal trainer to use some of that PT based work as foundational activity for moving on back into, you know, back into real kind of rigorous training. And for that, I mean, I can't imagine really a better tool. You know, not that I have access to one at the moment, but I would certainly use it if I had access to it, you know.
Yeah, so just something to keep in mind for those out there. If you're having shoulder pain, it's a non-invasive way to help that. And I don't like making blanket statements like that because, of course,
Yeah.
you know that's not supposed to be medical advice. Of course, see your PT
Right.
or your physician, depending. But it is something that I use that gave me tangible results and less pain in a pretty short amount of time. And I, you know, most of the time wasn't able to do that with other things, especially any gimmicky type devices. So
Sure.
let's go into some tips on increasing your shoulder press. The
Yeah.
good
I'm
old
interested about this one.
the good old shoulder press. It's funny because with all the shoulder issues I have or had, you know, I don't go overhead nearly as much as I
Mhm.
used to. I mean, I was going overhead almost every day in some form, which I think is
Mm.
one of the reasons why my shoulders, you know, were always in so much pain.
Yeah.
Um, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I just said, yeah, that makes a lot of
Oh,
sense.
so a great way to increase your shoulder press, because a lot of people do struggle to increase their max with their shoulder press, and it does take a long time for a lot of people to even move up a couple pounds. It's very challenging. So if you've
Sure.
never tried, I highly recommend you try a Z press. Now, what is a Z press? So what it is, you're sitting on the ground, your legs are out in front of you, and I would say you angle your legs at approximately, if you were to look at your legs from a bird's eye view, it'd be maybe a in between a 45 and 90 degree angle or so. But anyways, though, so your legs are out on the ground, and you start your shoulder press that way. So the barbell is close to your lap, and from there you grab it, and then you press straight up. So the great thing about the Z press, it takes all the movement or momentum from your legs out. You can't cheat with the Z press. It is all on your shoulders. And you're going to also notice when you are doing a Z press, it's going to very much so challenge your mobility. You're going to feel a little tightness in your hamstrings. And then in your thoracic region on your back, which is, you know, your mid upper back area, you're going to feel your flexibility being challenged a lot. And as you're pressing the weight up, you're going to feel it in your upper back a lot more than you would during the shoulder press. So you're not going to be able to do a lot of weight with this, which is, I think, a good thing. I think it's
Mhm.
good if we back down the weight every once in a while. You
Totally.
are going to target your delts in a fantastic way, and you're going to feel the entire time your mobility is being challenged to a degree a lot higher than the shoulder press. Also, you're going to notice when people shoulder press, to get the weight up, people are going to change their mechanics. Like their lower back
Mhm.
is going to hyperextend to allow for range of motion where they can actually press. So they're quote unquote cheating the rep a little bit. And also, it's, you know, that can lead to your back hurting
Mhm.
as well. You can't do that with a Z press. You're
Mm.
forced to stay in that position. Your core is stabilizing your body, and your thoracic is being challenged. So that is a great movement if you haven't. And I do recommend going very light with the Z press to
Yeah.
start. You can use a barbell, you can use dumbbells, you can use kettlebells, whatever you like. I prefer a barbell personally, but yeah, give that a shot. Do that for, you know, a couple weeks, a couple times a week, and see what it does to your shoulder press. Have you given those a go before, Clay?
You know, I have not, and I'm gonna because of this conversation. I'm really excited to. Though I do have again my little thing I want to throw in there, especially as the generalist in this conversation, for all our folks out there who are getting into exercise and kind of laying that foundation still.
Mm,
This is not the optimal exercise for you. This is for Jake is talking to Mostly folks who already are doing a shoulder press effectively and efficiently, and are looking to kind of enhance that effectiveness and efficiency, and really target kind of not only the upper areas of the back in a more isolated way, but forces you to stabilize yourself in a way that is really, for most of us, is kind of a novel way, with something that we're not going to
Oh
do,
yeah.
which is fantastic. That said, if you're starting out and you're learning shoulder press, you want to, first of all, as we always talk about, you want to be working with somebody who can show you how to do it properly. You want a good trainer to walk you through it. That aside, using your legs or sitting on the bench to stabilize yourself, as opposed to doing the Z squat for somebody who's learning, makes it much easier and more accessible to engage the core in a practical, functionally applicable way. Whereas if you're a learner and someone says go right to the Z press, then you're going to probably struggle with trying to figure out exactly how to apply that in a way that you can really get the most benefits. So it's really important that you know where you're at and how you might apply. That said, this is not to say it doesn't have benefits for the layman or for the beginner. Just make sure that you are approaching it in the safest, most effective way. And the way to do that is by working with somebody like myself or Jake, and there's people in your area that you can get in touch with. You got to search a little more sometimes, but they're there.
Yeah, so start light whenever you do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing, and you'll, like we mentioned before, it's going to challenge your mobility a lot, which could be a really
Mm-hmm.
good thing. But just definitely start on the easier, lighter side. Another tip for shoulder press. This one might sound very obvious, but is to practice them and practice them often. So when you are learning a movement, a lot of the adaptations ask actually a neuromuscular adaptation. So it's working on the movement pattern and getting better at that movement pattern. So one of the ways to do that is to practice often. The main consideration, though, if you're going to start practicing these even multiple times a week, the main thing is to not go heavy all the time.
Yeah.
We need to drop the load down enough to where it's not going to affect us so much the next day, but give us a chance to practice them on a more regular basis. So yeah, of course, every once in a while you are going to need to go quote unquote heavier to increase your max. But if you practice them often, we do need to decrease the load a bit. So it's not supposed to be a shoulder workout every day. If you choose to practice them every day, go way lighter, practice the movement, and become more efficient at the movement.
Absolutely. And that is regardless of whether you're a beginner or a veteran in the gym. Follow that advice. Exactly what Jake just said. I'm not going to repeat it because you said it very nicely.
And let's
Be
go
safe.
into our Q&A for the day, which is it best to do full range of motion squats? Now this is
a fun one.
This is a fun one, and it's a fun one to see people argue about online all the time. It's another good one. So
to be fair, to begin with, we are now talking about this. We're at the cusp of what's being challenged right now. We're at the challenge point between traditional learning and new anecdotal evidence that is leading us in kind of a direction that traditional fitness said not to go. Right. Anyway, I'll let you go to say what you're saying, but it's a really fertile topic for right now, especially.
Yep. So one of the first considerations is, what are your goals? That's a very important question to ask before you do just about any movement. So it's not random, and so it's purposeful. Now, for example, so for a long time, you would hear physicians and you'd hear strength and conditioning coaches and other people say squatting full range of motion, which is, your butt is below parallel. It's getting closer toward the ground. It used to be said that that's bad for your knees, which that statement on its own is completely not true. So let's take a regular person, a regular gym going person, or even someone that's new, we're going to leave athletes out of this just for a moment. So, generally speaking, it is best if we do a full range of motion with our lifts. And we've also seen a small benefit as far as muscle building when we do this. Not to say you can't build muscle when the motion is limited, but full range of motion tends to carry over best for muscle building and strength effects. That being said, this also depends on your personal mobility. If you start going down on your squat, and the second you get to somewhere around parallel to the ground and your lower back starts to round a ton, we're not going to go past that. There's not going to be any benefit to do that. And you'd also probably be a bit more susceptible to injure yourself. So we have to find that fine line of what's our goal and what is going to challenge my mobility, but it's not going to lead to an injury or to your lower back hurting, because that's definitely happened to some of us before. So if we find that sticking point, we can work on challenging our mobility there to then further a range of motion. But don't just go full range of motion, your butt touching the ground, just to say you did a full range of motion squat. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, so that's general recommendation for the everyday person. Now, if you are, say, an athlete, this is where the answer to this may be a little bit different. So many athletes, especially those that have a strength and conditioning program, say in high school or college, they follow it's called a periodization or a schedule of how they exercise. They move to different blocks or phases of their training. Now, take a basketball player. Many times it may be optimal for them to squat to parallel or even quite or a little above parallel, because think of when they are shooting or when they're producing the most power. The movement of a squat, when it's just a partial range of motion squat that's not below parallel, that's going to mimic a bit more of what they're doing on the court. And that's going to help as far as them producing power in their sport. So that would be an example where it may be good for an athlete to go through blocks or training cycles where they don't do a full range of motion squat. But for the everyday person, normally full range of motion is best if you can own that range of motion. I'm not saying drop down and you're looking, like a wet noodle on your way down to the ground during your squat. But what you can own, whatever range of motion that you can completely own. Now, what do I mean by that? If you're someone, like I mentioned before, your back starts to round really bad, or you start to notice you get below parallel and everything starts to shake, your knees start to cave in, also known as knee knocking or knee valgus, or any of those things are happening, there's not a point to keep going at that point. You are setting yourself up for failure. Clayton, what do you got with this one?
I mean, you really you hit the nail on the head. The one thing that I would add to that is this question is particularly pertinent to anybody who has a compromised knee system. So whether that means that you've got old injuries like myself that you have to account for, or you have some like I have had a couple clients who have knee replacements, who simply don't have the same mobility that somebody who doesn't have a knee replacement has.
Great point.
So when we start talking about, again, you guys are going to hear me kind of come back to this point time and time again, which is, you said it and you already said it. What are we doing and why? Right. So if you are somebody who, like Jake mentioned, is somebody who, is an athlete, you're going to have more confidence in your ability to, as Jake phrased it, own your weight. And I'll say my description of owning your weight is, are you in control of it at all times?
That's good.
And if you're in control of it at all times, and if you are truly in control of it at all times, then you are going to have the ability to get out of a lot of these exercises a more specific outcome. So on the other side of that is, if you're somebody like myself who has some serious knee injuries, you might find that your results from doing a full range or even over range, depending on your perspective, squat. Like, I'm trying to dance around it. Knees over toes, guys. Most of us are familiar with him because he's awesome and he's doing some really cool stuff. His information, our science, our global science has not caught up with the anecdotal information that he's presenting, that athletes and high performers and even laymen's everywhere are, especially people who are dealing with knee injury or surgery, recovering from surgery, they're finding anecdotal evidence that's saying that some of these techniques that he teaches, which are totally in the face of traditional fitness, really lead to some incredible results as far as gaining strength, mobility, and reducing pain and discomfort and inflammation. So where does this leave us? Where does this leave you as a listener? With a whole lot of options. And the answer to what's best for you is going to depend on how you feel going through your own personal range of motion. My full range of motion is not the same as Jake's full range of motion. They're just different. We're different people. Our femurs are different lengths, probably. Actually, we're about the same height. So we're probably actually more similar than we are different. But the idea being that we all have a particular set of circumstances, and unique bodies that necessitate our individualized appraisal of what is appropriate, especially when we're starting to talk about what we consider our full range of motion for our squat. Because I'll tell you, I refer to full range of motion to my clients, but I teach only to 90 degrees. And the reason for that is because traditionally speaking, as a trainer, I don't have the scientific backing to say I should be switching them over to this knees over toes guy style. That said, I practice that. I think that it's the future of how we approach squats and lower body stuff. And so I do say to my clients, look, this isn't necessarily supported, academically yet, but I'm finding success with it. These people are finding success with it. If you'd like, educate yourself and maybe have an idea of what's coming next, right? But really, we are on the cusp of what's being done in our field, and really, really fun, exciting stuff, especially for someone like myself who, if it wasn't for fitness, I'd be completely sedentary, because my knees, when I'm not active, my knees are shot. I'm non-mobile, relatively non-mobile when I'm out of shape because of my knee injuries. So yeah, it's a lot of interesting stuff to consider.
And I do like that you mentioned the point about possible knee injuries. I forgot to cover that. A great thing that you can do if you do have issues with your knee is doing box squats. And you set the box to a level that isn't increasing your pain. So for some, that could be squatting down a couple inches. For some, that could be a little above parallel. But when you're having knee issues, box squats really help, because you can control how far down you go and gauge it on how much pain or lack thereof you have when you're doing them. So box squats, that's one that I did a lot when I was having knee issues. And then even with my back issues, sometimes I'll do box squats to control my range of motion a little bit more. So that is definitely a great way to go. All right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the episode today, and we hope you enjoyed the content. If you are and you haven't subscribed to our show yet, go ahead and do that. Please scroll down to the bottom of your phone there and leave us a 5-star review. It's going to help grow the show tremendously. Give us a follow on Instagram. You can find us at Mission Driven Made. And lastly, we have a free online fitness community called The Forum, which you can also find a link in the show description for that. It's free. It's for listeners of the podcast to go on there and connect with each other, to start conversations. And also, it's a place where you can connect with me and Clayton whenever you'd like. You can ask questions about fitness, health, nutrition, lifestyle, mindset, any of that, and we would love to help. So go ahead and click that link in the description, and we would be happy to let you into our free platform. All right, everyone, we hope you have a great rest of your day. We love you. And until next time, stay mission driven.